And do you ever work with people who don't want to stop drinking or taking drugs? And if so, what's your approach towards working with them?
Um, I think yes, I certainly would say I do. I think by the time I meet people, because they've entered treatment at that point, so there's some expression there of, well, something's not going right here. I'd say people are probably conflicted a lot of the time, kind of in those earlier stages. Um, they may want to stop, but there might be a lot they're still actually getting from it. Or again, I think this is another really good area where occupational therapy brings some real strength to exploring um, what's actually going on for this person. Why might you not feel you could change?
Mm,
And sometimes, I think, I have this conversation sometimes with people. This so and so is not motivated, and I think it's a lot more complicated than that. Um, there's a really good article written by an OT working in a dual diagnosis service, kind of up in Manchester, I think it is, Ben Metcalf, and he sort of he writes it really well. And I guess the sort of the point of it is, so someone's never not motivated; they're just more motivated to continue using the substance,
mm,
as they have than stopping. And it's kind of exploring that, kind of potentially through occupational lens,
mm,
using kind of like the model of practice, for example, so actually again I come back to kind of like volition and kind of like personal causation. Well, how do you perceive your skill and ability? What's your self-efficacy like? Why do you feel it might be difficult to change? Um, and sometimes you have practical barriers. Um, and sometimes actually you have these sort of like psychological or kind of deep-rooted kind of values issues, and it's just kind of going into it with this real curiosity. I think sometimes if you kind of let yourself off the hook, I guess like any treatment really, if you don't go in there with an agenda to try and problem solve, it's kind of those wonderful skills that we kind of learn and kind of hone, kind of throughout our practice. It's that, well, okay, I'm not here to solve your problems. I'm here to sort of, sometimes be a mirror to them and help you find your own solutions, but kind of with a few helpful nudges. Um, I think there is always something to be gained. Those familiar with the cycle of change, you have kind of different stages where someone's at in terms of their behavior change, for example, substance use. If someone is in pre-contemplation where they're not aware or they don't feel it's problem, you can still, you can pitch your intervention, you can pitch what you offer or try and support that person with something called harm reduction. So not condoning what you're doing, I'm not trying to change, I'm not even suggesting you change, but why not do it in a safer way? And that's where we have something, kind of like the needle exchange programs.
mm.
Um, because you fundamentally you cannot make someone change unless they feel it is worthwhile and they have a sense of agency and control about it.
Thank you. Can you talk about occupational justice in relation to your work? That's something I've heard you talk about previously.
Yeah, sure. In terms of occupational justice, I haven't got the snappy, I haven't got the snappy definition in front of me right now, but we'll kind of pull that out of my brain instead. So I guess it's kind of the fair and equitable access to a variety of occupations. Probably didn't do it justice, but then just then. So I gave a presentation on this earlier this year, sort of focusing on, well, actually, people using substances. So they use substances from, the use of substances has arisen from a product of occupation injustice. So the lack of access to fair, equitable health and care services,
Mhm.
actually being denied treatment, and actually the kind of the fair division of resource. So the example I think I gave was people growing up, in severe economic challenge. So if you grow up in a household that is experiencing severe poverty, and stress and all the sort of the challenges that come from that, in terms of like mental health issues, sort of nutrition, physical health issues, vulnerability, or at least that's really it creates this vulnerability to using substances. So then you go out into the world, you encounter substances, and there is evidence suggesting you may be more likely to use substances in kind of a problematic way to kind of cope with that difficulty.
Mm.
But on the other side of it, we've got when you use substances, it can kind of bring about these circumstances where, okay, you don't have access to stable accommodation, to supportive or understanding employment, um, to kind of family and support networks, to even access treatment services because it's alcohol, or you just need to sort of sort your substance use out before you can have access to this. Which, okay, yes, kind of there are cases where it kind of may be redundant to try, but it's kind of actually having access to the mean to address it. I guess the example there would be sort of mental health issues. Um, so it's just ensuring that um, people have access to meaningful occupation, to occupational balance. Um, I can't remember all the other pillars off the top of my head, um, but it should be considered an integral approach to supporting someone's recovery. Because if you do what you've always done, you've got sort of sentiment towards it.
Thank you. And you've touched on the dark side of occupations earlier. Why do you think it's important that as OTs we acknowledge the dark side of occupations?
Um, I think first and foremost, kind of see, I'm really biased around substance use.
Mm.
Um, I just think um, the use of substances is so pervasive throughout society, and for good and bad. I mean, I think one of the figures I got in my head was there were 10,000 alcohol-related deaths in 2022. Um, and in the same year, 6% of all hospital admissions were were related to alcohol.
Mm.
And you just think, bloody hell, that's a really high number. And
Yeah.
that's not even sort of taking into account um, the fact that you know, they've got alcohol related, so you've got specific and related, so the story's even bigger. So kind of the point being for OTs, we will encounter substance use in pretty much every service that we work in.
Mm.
Um, and it's kind of understanding what role that plays for that person. So far beyond, you need to calculate your units or you need to cut down. It's like, well, why that can be potentially harmful advice, kind of if you stop what have you got? I'm not, it's a tricky line to kind of walk with that because you may have, say, someone who's really socially isolated, and the only thing that gets them out of the house and gives them social interaction is going to the pub.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying, go for your life with it. It's more like, okay, we need to look at kind of alternatives or
Mm.
kind of, options for, maybe you don't want to stop this, but they're kind of alternatives we can explore there. I think certainly with the dark side of occupation, if we don't study it, then how can we really understand like how to treat someone, in an actually properly holistic way? Um, because I think I sort of alluded to the example earlier. If we're encouraging people to stop using substances without fully understanding what benefit, what kind of influence this has over this person's occupations, then we're setting them up to fail. And
Mm.
my God, there's already enough kind of evidence in the kind of don't stop, carry on using sort of column, on this
Mm.
is, you're kind of in these things. Um, so kind of it's kind of having a real depthy, careful understanding, because we can apply that if that's what the person wants. We can build on that understanding to help them achieve their goals, whatever they may be.
Mm. Thank you. And again, you mentioned previously about other OTs that you'd been networking with who already work in the drug and alcohol field. Are there many OTs, say nationally or
Mm.
Wales, England, Scotland. And what's the future of OTs in these services?
So kind of yeah, when I started, I had never met another substance use OT, or an OT who works in substance use.
Mm,
So I reached out on the one of the Facebook pages, so the Addiction for OT, and I had I think five other OTs from around the UK and Ireland respond. So we kind of found some time to sort of get together and meet and compare notes essentially. Um, and I just sort of, kind of part of my initial sort of setting up, I was reading everything I could. I was reaching out to literally anyone who would respond and listen and kind of have that conversation. And it sort of snowballed from there. So kind of the more people we sort of found and they brought more people in, and then it sort of started to be like, oh, there's a special interest group forming. And I think it was it's been about 2.5 years now since we've been meeting every 8 weeks. I would credit, kind of the frequency of that to kind of, the interest. And we get sort of quite a bit of buy-in each time. I try to organise different speakers or a different focus and kind of facilitate a discussion each kind of time. So we've got over 100 OTs attached to this. So, I mean, when I say OTs, we have students, we have faculty members, we have OTs who aren't working in the sort of traditional sort of patient-facing sort of clinical roles. So it's quite diverse. It's something I've really enjoyed. Kind of, actually that sort of networking has just been so fun because I've learned a hell of a lot. And hopefully, I mean, people keep turning up every other month, so people must be getting something from it. But I think a lot of us in the occupational therapy and substance use network, a lot of us have been sort of lone practitioners. So it's been a case of creating our own support networks
yeah.
in order to not feel so alone. Because in my practice, I don't see an OT from week to week, month to month sometimes. Um, I mean, I'm currently recruiting for a band six, so hopefully that
Mhm.
won't be the case much longer. But it's kind of it's provided a real integral piece of support, and it's actually led to lots of really great opportunities as well. Like, I've sort of spoken at lots of different places now. I can't even keep track, um, which sort of demonstrates to me there's a real keen interest in kind of our role in substance use. I mean, I've sort of built some good links with occupational therapy and homelessness networks and health
Mhm.
inclusion networks. So there's just such crossover, kind of with substance use. But I've had a couple of OTs in touch recently from sort of more acute physical medical settings. I'm like, this is just equally as valid.
Mm,
Um, so I'm trying at the moment, or in the process of trying to create a consensus statement from all the OTs in the network, or as many who want to put in their 2 pence, kind of, if they want to, just to kind of have this. Well, this, we've got this description. This is what we do in sort of general terms, and this is what makes us stand out from our MDT peers, and this is why you should value us. And these are the things that we're doing in order to kind of measure that. Because there isn't, there's lots and lots have been written about occupational therapy and substance use. Um, some absolutely fantastic articles out there, sort of, providing this basis and the conceptualization. But in order to move on now, we've all come together and just sort of have, kind of have some sort of legitimacy of influence.
mm,
Um, with someone like, say, the RCOT, just say we're here, we will consult on issues because these wonderful documents and all these, kind of strategies and this, that, and the other sometimes, I mean, most of the time, they don't even mention substance use, or even if it is, it's just in, kind of very a footnote.
mm,
Um, when actually substance use is a gargantuan public health issue,
yeah.
and it's there, it's there in every area we practice. So I think we're just kind of getting organised at the moment. And it's like, well, we've probably reached the ceiling of what we can do, and everyone's very busy doing local things, but it's the challenge is kind of bringing everything together for a coordinated sort of, national/international push there.
Okay, and on to the last question now. Has there been much research that's been done about OTs working in substance abuse?
So I guess it's how you define research. There's a lot of there are a lot of journal articles, papers, and stuff out there, describing addiction as occupation. I don't know whether that's the correct term because addiction sort of, it's yeah, I'm not quite sure how you would define that. Kind of a very sort of snappy definition, but it sounds to me like it's more of a collection of occupations that sort of what addiction is essentially a collection of kind of occupations.
Mm.
So I sort of tend to opt for the occupational perspective of substance use. So loads of wonderful papers out there. I would draw attention to the Ryan and Boland paper. I think it's the 2021 paper, which basically looks at all the evidence, brings it all together. Is it a scoping? Yeah, I think it's a scoping review. This was incredibly useful when I first started this job. Like, good God, there's lots of kind of little studies and this, that, and everything out there. All manner of different occupations being applied to in a substance use setting, all kind of for those needs. And it kind of it sort of describes that, well, actually, we're a really good fit. We can do this. And there's lots of other articles out there that kind of focus on, I'm thinking one, on, kind of this sense of, the concept of mastery. So, for example, substance use services, deliver a lot of occupation focused stuff already, so kind of in the in a lot of the treatment frameworks and guidelines, it's like, right, okay, we recognize the need to get people back into education, employment, blah, blah, blah. But some people aren't ready for that. It's like a lot of sort of like emotional skills training, for example, will take place in groups and not in the most natural of environments. So, in order to really be successful and have mastery of a skill, you can apply it in a real live environment when you need it. And I think it's probably one of the kind of the elements of OT that we bring because we are very good at, well, okay, let's get you out and out. Let's get you doing this thing that you kind of want to do, but you're a little bit reticent to do. Um, so lots of, and I guess it's thinking wider to kind of the OT specific research.
Mm.
Um, I'm thinking, kind of one of the articles that always sticks in my head is there was a systematic review of relapse factors in alcohol use disorder for over 20 years. I mean, there was some sort of difficulty defining what relapse is, because you can have lapse, one off, couple off, and then relapse just kind of going right back to it. Um, the challenges, I think I may have alluded to this earlier. The challenges are um, sort of difficulty with co-occurring mental health issue symptoms, physical health issues, lack of social support, and the things that actually promoted people's recovery, that actually helped them stay in recovery, were a sense of self-efficacy. So I'm good. I can do this.
Mm.
There was some evidence around, having the occupational role of a parent. Um, but kind of, I mean, the research was only sort of, focused on kind of mothers on that one. But the other sort of the key thing was, if I have a sense of purpose, then I'm less likely to return to previous use. Um, and I just think that doesn't scream OT. What does? So it's kind of finding, facilitating, enabling all those ways for someone to kind of carve out or recapture purpose in their life.
Mm. Thank you. Thanks, John. That's been a really fascinating podcast episode with you. Thanks very much for
Thank
your
you.
time.
No, it's been lovely to share some thoughts.